For many years I used the Halfords primers for priming engines. The red primer, of course, for black or red engines, the grey for other engines, and the white primer for a white coach roof. It's all you need on a coach roof, just a coat of white primer. It's sufficiently matte. You don't need any top coat on at all. But nowadays I use precision 2-part etching primer. It comes in 2 parts, obviously. In the polythene bottle you get the thinners, and in the can you get the paint part of it. And the active ingredient is an acid in the thinners. And I find this gives a beautiful smooth finish, rather smoother than the Halfords primer. But it only works if you ignore the instructions on the back. It says mix 1 to 1. It just doesn't work at 1 to 1. You need at least 3 parts to 1 part paint. So what I use, my normal method of measuring out any paints, I use an eyedropper and a mustard spoon, which give roughly the same measurement each. Now, in the airbrush funnel, the hole at the bottom where the paint comes through is very, very tiny. Now, if you put the paint in there first, you're going to clog it up. So we always put the thinners in first. Now, the mix I use for the etching primer, I always put this into a smaller bottle because that's more stable on my bench. I put 2 parts of etching primer thinners in with the dropper. Always putting the top back on afterwards in case it gets knocked over. And 1 part cellulose thinners. Although it says on the can it's an enamel, it behaves just like a cellulose because it dries very quickly. So that's the thinners all sorted out. And put this away as well. The primer itself is quite a thick liquid, which gets thicker very quickly once you leave the top off. The oils then evaporate very quickly. Just let it stop dripping off. Put that in there. I need a stirrer. Just a small screwdriver. Scrape what I can off the mustard spoon. Put that down. Now you should wipe the mustard spoon straight away because paint travels amazing distances when it's not watched. And that's it ready. Now to apply this I use the single action airbrush because I want to get a flood of primer on the model. With a dual action airbrush you're very likely to put too much air in, very little paint, and it's going to be dry before it hits the model. So I need a good flood of paint from this. That's now ready. Switch the compressor on. Let it come out. Blow off the thinners first. And just opening up a touch. And proceed as before. Deliberate strokes from very close to. You don't need to cover all the surface blemishes, because once the thinners get in there and start etching away, the job is working. You must make sure the paint is wet when it gets to the model, or else you're going to get a sandpaper finish. And make sure all the edges are done. The edges are very vulnerable for paint to chip off. And that's it finished for that side. It dries very quickly and we can again use the hairdryer to accelerate that. That's nearly there. And we can continue with the top now. And that's it, job done. Now that must be left for 24 hours before you put another coat on, because it takes that time for the acid to etch into the brass and create a very good key. And once it's done, it's very good. If you want to strip that off now, you'd have difficulty.